Hello, my quilting friends. My name is Leah Day, and welcome to this Frame Quilting Friday video. Today, I want to practice travel stitching on my long arm. This is a technique that's a little tricky. Basically, what it is it's whenever you stitch a line of quilting and then you quilt back along that line. Sometimes it's to create another shape in the design. Sometimes it's simply to make the design look pretty. So sometimes it's decorative and sometimes it's just something you need to know how to do in order to reach the next area of your quilt. So it's an important technique and skill to build, and today we're going to learn how to do this together. So let's get started. So let's get started with tree roots, and this is an awesome design to practice travel stitching because it involves so much travel stitching with every single line you stitch. So as you can see, it starts with a curvy line, you just branch out, and then you travel stitch back, and then branch out with more curvy lines, travel stitch back, and another curvy line. Your goal here is to kind of start with openness like this, kind of grow the tree root out into that area, and then break up that space with more tree roots and interlock them together and make it more interesting. And I really like it when there's kind of a double, so you kind of branch out with a line, then travel stitch back, and then branch out with another one. I just think that looks really, really nice versus just having kind of a single wiggly line there. I don't think that looks as nice, but that's just my opinion. No right or wrong way to stitch it, of course. And as you can see, this is on the messy side. I cannot quilt this absolutely perfect. However, I'm very satisfied with my stitching here. I really actually like this, filling in this area. It's just a little bit of a struggle to really control the machine because the machine can move so freely over the frame. And this is the big difference between long arm quilting and quilting on a home sewing machine where you're pushing the quilt under the needle, and that is you're going to have to understand having this much easy movement. It's going to be easier to make big sweeping movements. It's going to be easier to wiggle out with that curve like that. That's going to be easier on a long arm. But the travel stitching, the careful, slow stitching back is going to be what's hard. Okay, I'm pretty satisfied with that. I took a little bit of time to warm up as I stitched through that area, so my stitches were looking a little bit better, but as you can see, I wasn't perfect at travel stitching. So let's think about something that we could add that would make this a little bit easier. Well, our machine moves really freely. That's kind of the number one thing about long arm quilting, and we really like that. It makes it easier to push the machine around. We can form and fill these spaces faster. But when it comes to travel stitching, we kind of want to limit the machine's movement to give us more control over that. So what I'm going to do is add a little bit of resistance, and that comes in the form of a bag of rice. This is a 3-pound bag of rice I just pulled out of my pantry, and this works really, really well. Although I think 3 pounds is a little bit heavy. I think I want to redo this, maybe even sew a rice bag. This is an idea I got from Sharon Chamber. And I want to sew a rice bag and keep, kind of an even amount of rice through the entire long arm versus just having it in one spot. I think that would be nice. But if you're at the grocery store and just thinking about this, maybe a bag of like 1 pound bag of beans would probably be plenty. This feels like it's a bit on the heavy side. It adds quite a lot of resistance so that I actually really have to pull and push the machine around. But that is really, really helpful because when I do that travel stitching back, like right there, I had the ability to go slow because the rice bag was putting that extra pressure down onto my machine, and it's really forcing it. It's just adding extra pressure, and that extra pressure is giving me more control. And I should also add that I do have my ruler plate here on the machine, so that's in place. So it really is adding resistance through this entire area. And I might actually kind of rotate it around and flatten it out a little bit. I think that might give me even more. Let's see if that really helps. So here I'm going to pull down, nice wiggly line, travel stitch slowly and carefully. It doesn't matter whether you have the rice bag in place or not, you're still going to have to do that travel stitching more slowly than you will your branch out stitching. Whenever you're stitching the wiggly line, that can be done fairly fast. When you're doing the travel stitching, that's where you need to slow down. And I should say also, my stitches aren't looking as good actually as they were, and I think the reason is you get used to whatever resistance you're used to feeling. So if you practice a lot with the rice bag and you start seeing good results, and then you take the rice bag away, it might not look as good. And then also if you practice a lot without a rice bag and then you add one, it might not end up helping you that much. So it's something to be thinking about. I feel like I'm kind of overcompensating right now. I'm pushing too hard against the machine in order to overcompensate for the resistance that I'm getting from the rice bag. So yeah, maybe I'm working too hard here. It might be interesting just to try out and experiment and compare a 1 pound bag versus a 3 pound bag. I think this is a little on the heavy side. And see, I just did a major stitch off. That's really sloppy, but this is really where it's at as far as practice. This is exactly what I want to do. Quilting on a small scale, making small movements, really getting the practice in that I need in order to build this skill. But, you know, it's easy to get bored, you know, stitching the same thing over and over again. And I do think that it's good to stick with one design at least as much as you can, but if you're just really bored to tears with it and you're not liking how it looks, then it's absolutely allowed to change designs and start practicing something else. So now I want to switch to Paisley. So this design is stitched by quilting a teardrop shape. Let's see if I can do this a little bit better than my tree roots. You pivot and then echo around that teardrop. There we go. Now I'm going to travel stitch. I'm going to swing back. Now that rice bag's going to potentially get in my way. I got to watch out for that. Now I'm going to swing around. I think I'm going to shift this and go back with it a little bit like that. I think that'll work better. And try not to have a wobbly teardrop as I come around. There we go. Pivot and echo again. Well, I can definitely say this is looking better. I had some Paisley in another tumbler shape and it really didn't look this good. I wasn't able to go this slow. Careful travel stitching in the ditch. Yeah, any kind of slow, steady stitching, anything really precise, like stitching in the ditch, all of that is going to be improved by using the rice bag. That's going to give you more control and careful stitching. Being able to hit a line precisely and then stitch right along it. I almost did that well. I mean, it was a little bit of a stitch out, but you know, it's how picky you want to be. And when we stitch on a small scale like this, it's easy to get too picky. So I want you to not judge yourself for however your stitches look out. You just have to keep on going. Even when it looks messy, even when it's not perfect, you just have to keep on going. Now there I did the opposite shape. I did the outer teardrop first, and that really I think works better on a long arm because then you have the shape kind of filling in all the space it's going to fill up. Let's try that again. I'm going to come out with a large shape, and I can speed up. That feels really good too. Now I'm going to go inside for internal echoes, and I'm hitting that point and then swinging in again. I would say that almost feels easier on the long arm than it does on a whole machine. I like that. Let's try that again. I'm going to swing out with the bigger shape and then go inside with my smaller teardrop shape. Let's go inside once more. The more repetition of any movement that you get, the better you're going to get at making it. Let's do some careful stitching in the ditch. Not perfect, but better than it was before, definitely. Now I've shifted down. My ruler plate is now down here. My rice bag is still right here. So you want to make sure to kind of move that along with you. And also with the cues on frame, because I'm setting down, I also have to roll my chair down too. So keep that in mind. Move your rice bag with you and move your chair so you're not ending up with your hands kind of way further down on the frame than your body, because that could definitely cause some torquing on your back. That would not be comfortable. Okay, slow, steady travel stitching. Back in. Let's go back to the original way that I usually stitch Paisley, and that is a small teardrop shape. And then pivot and echo around it. I think the reason why this feels a little harder on the long arm is that there's always a chance that as you swing around, it's going to get wobbly, you know, that it's not going to look as nice. Versus whenever you start with the big shape first, I don't know why, but for some reason that feels easier to me. Definitely give it a try, and you tell me which way feels easier for you. I'm very curious to know. All right, and I'll just fill in with a couple curvy lines over in this corner. Okay, I've got one more design that I think is really great for learning travel stitching, for practicing. And really, you want to take any of these and just cover an entire quilt with it. I know that gets boring. Trust me, been there, done that. When I was learning on a home machine, I covered entire quilts with stippling, and it was so boring, but it was such good practice. Okay, so this is escargot. You start with a circle, you go inside for a spiral, you fill in the space completely with that spiral, and then you travel stitch along it all the way back out. I don't think I breathed through that entire thing. That was pretty intense. So I'm pretty happy with that. Let's try it without the rice bag just to see what happens. If I can go with that much control. So I'll swing around. Now I can swing around with the circle fairly fast, and I can make the spiral fairly fast. But I bet I'm not going to be able to stitch that, to travel stitch that as easily. Well, actually, I'm pretty surprised. That looks actually much better than I was expecting. Let's try that again. And then another thing to keep in mind is all practice is cumulative, which means the more you do any particular skill, the better you're going to get at all of it. So the skill that, you know, the practice I've gotten in with my tree roots, the practice I got in with Paisley, all of that is now helping as I quilt this escargot. I'm actually feeling like this is pretty good. Now I kept the rice bag here on the machine. It's on the frame, but it's off my machine, so I'm kind of to the side of it. Maybe that is what we need. I'm going to actually try it over here. So it's about 2 inches off the side of my ruler base, but it is still adding pressure down on the quilt. It's still pushing it downward. So maybe that's giving me all the resistance and extra tension that I need. And I can feel it even now. I can kind of feel that the quilt is pushing against the long arm and slowing down its movement. I really like that. I like it slightly off the side. I think it's a little bit too intense even when you put the rice bag on the ruler plate or directly over the machine. I think that's a little bit too much. But here, this feels like it's almost the right amount. And I'm going a little bit faster, so I'm definitely getting sloppier. You gotta keep a nice, slow, steady pace with that travel stitching. Slow and steady wins the race. I know it's boring. It really does get dull, but that's really the key to making it look great, building that skill, and then being able to do it. You know, it would just be so wonderful to be able to have the control to slow down, to have that fine muscle movement in my arms so that I could be able to do that anytime I wanted to on any type of quilt. You know, that would be so awesome. So a lot more practice obviously to do, but there are 3 beautiful designs to use to practice travel stitching. So that's it for this video. I hope you learned a lot about travel stitching and you're excited about giving these designs a try. Now, the biggest key with learning any skill on your long arm or quilting on your home machine is repetition. So I'm not gonna really see a change in my skills if I just quilt a little bit of tree roots or a little bit of escargot. I need to take these designs and quilt it over the entire quilt and on a smaller scale too. And the reason is that gives me so much more bang for my buck. That's going to give me so much more practice and skill building on this quilt versus if I make those shapes really, really big. So this is something to keep in mind. I know you might not necessarily want to quilt densely, but it's really good to practice quilting densely whenever you're skill building, whenever you're focusing on a new technique, because you're going to get so many more repetitions of that technique for the smaller amount of space that you quilt. So I'm going to be doing a whole lot of tree roots, escargot, and paisley now but that's okay. This is what it takes in order to build the skill and have confidence in your travel stitching. So I hope that you enjoyed this video and you learned a lot. If you'd like to learn more about the machine that I'm using, this is the Grace Qnique 14 Plus or 15R. It's the same machine, just different numbers. And I am quilting here on the Q-Zone hoop frame. And you can learn more about this setup at leahday.com/Qzone. You can also find all of the videos that I've shared so far. I've got another long arm downstairs, this one upstairs, and we're really having a lot of fun exploring this whole world of long arm quilting. So check out all of the videos I've shared so far at leahday.com/frame. Until next time, let's go quilt.